somewhere deep inside a forgotten dungeon, an adventurer standing before a monstrous creature. His courage, however, was no match for the beast's appetite, as it swiftly hid in a single gulp. No time for final words, dramatic music, or even a proper scream. However, sometime later, he woke up. Not in the afterlife, not in a hospital, but as a skeleton. Yep, bare bones, hollow eyes, and all. But let's rewind a bit. Back in town, the day had begun like any other. Scholars bustled off to their dusty books, merchants opened their stalls, and adventurers sharpened their swords with dreams of glory, and hopefully not death. Among them was rentt, a bronze-class adventurer whose most impressive feat after 10 long years was managing to not starve. He wasn't flashy or famous, but he scraped by with sheer persistence. Unable to find a quest suitable for his humble rank, rentt decided to explore the moon's reflection labyrinth, mostly picked clean by other adventurers. But luck, or perhaps doom, was on his side. While wandering, he stumbled upon a mysterious, unexplored tunnel. Ignoring every self-preservation instinct, he ventured deeper and deeper, until he found himself face to face with a dragon. A real one. Huge, terrifying, and definitely not vegan. Frozen in fear, rentt didn't even raise his sword before being promptly devoured. Just like that, game over. Or was it? Now, back to the present. As undead were considered blasphemous, rentt knew he couldn't just waltz back into town unless he fancied a priest blasting him into holy dust. So, he started wandering the labyrinth again, this time in his new rattling form. He soon encountered another skeleton, just like himself, though a little less fashionably armed. With surprising skill, rentt defeated it and absorbed its spirit energy. That's when it hit him. With enough spirit energy, monsters can evolve. If he could evolve into a ghoul, a monster with actual flesh, he might just be able to disguise himself, return to town, and seek help. Meanwhile, back at the Adventurers Guild, folks had started to worry. rentt hadn't returned, and they were considering sending someone to investigate, perhaps assuming he got lost in a tavern rather than a dragon's belly. Down in the labyrinth, rentt continued his grind. He battled slimes, slashed through skeletons, and began to grow stronger. Much to his surprise, he was now better with a sword and magic than he ever was as a living human. Being dead had its perks, apparently. He began to dream again, of climbing the ranks, of becoming a legendary mithril-class adventurer. Eventually, after slaying yet another gooey slime, rentt evolved into a ghoul. He now had actual flesh, though flesh might be generous, more like jerky that had been left in the sun. Still, it was a step forward. Now all he had to do was relearn how to speak using his dry, rotted vocal cords. It wasn't easy sounding heroic when you sounded like a broken flute. Now that rentt had regained some flesh on his bones, though not exactly in peak human condition, he found himself able to fight stronger monsters like goblins, foes he could never defeat in his living days. His spells were stronger too, confirming what he had started to suspect. Being undead came with some serious perks. Maybe dying wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to him. Technically it was, but still. While exploring, he noticed a novice adventurer wandering the labyrinth. He could tell instantly she wasn't from Malt. Being a small village, rentt knew every adventurer there. As the unofficial labyrinth guide for rookies, and because the guild liked having someone who actually knew where things were, he always kept an eye on newcomers. Not wanting to scare the girl with his ghoul face, he stayed hidden. Unfortunately, the girl wandered into a dangerous part of the labyrinth, and was soon cornered by a skeleton. rentt had no choice. He stepped in, slayed the threat, and saved her. Understandably, she was spooked at the sight of a cloaked ghoul with a sword, but thanks to his partially recovered voice, rentt was able to explain himself. He told her his story, well, the quick version, and asked a favor. Would she buy him some clothes so he could leave the labyrinth without causing a mass panic? He even gave her money to cover the expense. The girl, introducing herself as Rena Rupage, agreed and left. rentt wasn't entirely sure she'd come back. She might report him to the authorities, but he hoped she'd return. To his relief, Rena did come back, carrying a black coat, gloves, boots, and, regretfully, a cheap iron mask she had bought from a suspicious merchant. Since rentt couldn't show his decaying face in public, he put everything on. Unfortunately, the iron mask turned out to be cursed. It latched onto his face like it had found its soulmate, and wouldn't come off. rentt tried everything, even using his divinity, but he ran out of mana before managing to pry it loose. In the end, he decided to live with it, and hoped a priest could deal with it later. Rena still looked a little uneasy, but she took his hand and told him she wasn't scared anymore. To make up for the cursed mask incident, she offered to escort him back to Malt. On the way, she shared more about herself. She was from a noble knight family and had come to Malt because the capital was overflowing with high-ranked adventurers, making it hard for a beginner to find her place. At the village gate, Rentt suggested she go on alone, not wanting to draw attention or put her at risk. But Rena insisted. They made it through the border by blaming his unsettling appearance and raspy voice on the cursed mask. The guards tried to remove it, failed, shrugged, and let them pass. Once inside, Rentt quietly slipped away. He didn't want to cause Rena any more trouble, but he promised himself he'd see her again to thank her properly. He made his way to the home of Lorraine Vivi, a silver-class adventurer and his friend. Despite the late hour, he woke her up. She recognized him immediately, even under the creepy iron mask. Rentt held out his partially rotted hand and she simply asked, "What happened to him?" Before Rentt arrived, Lorraine, who was certainly in love with Rentt and hoping for his return, as she heard the knock at the door, she pretended to sleep. Rentt explains everything to her, how he died, how he resurrected as a skeleton, and how he had evolved into a ghoul. He explained his desire to continue adventuring, hoping to one day reach his lifelong goal of becoming a mithril-class adventurer. Lorraine listened patiently, then asked the most important question. "Are you really Rentt, or just a monster wearing his memories?" Rentt admitted, with a grim smile, that even he wasn't entirely sure anymore. Despite that, Lorraine decided he could live with her. In return, she would act as his proxy for guild matters, since showing up as a half-rotted corpse would probably lead to a city-wide panic. However, she had one condition. Rentt had to help her with her ongoing research into monster evolution, which now included a rather personal case study. Later, Lorraine returned from the guild with news and payment from the materials Rentt had collected in the labyrinth. Rentt eagerly took the money. He needed a new sword, one strong enough to withstand the power of his now enhanced magic. He visited the local blacksmith, Clope, to commission a special blade. Meanwhile, back at home, Lorraine buried herself in books about monster evolution, but none of them matched Rentt's bizarre transformation. She paused and reminisced about how they met. She had been planning a solo quest when another adventurer suggested she take a rookie along, Rentt, and teach him. Back then, nothing really excited her. Becoming a doctor and a silver-class adventurer hadn't brought her joy. But during that quest, while she struggled to locate rare herbs, Rentt had already gathered them and even helped her defeat a monster. It dawned on her then, her silver rank was mostly academic, while Rentt had true field skill. She began learning from him instead, and somewhere along the way, admiration turned into affection. Clope quietly recognized Rentt but chose not to say anything, honoring Rentt's wish to remain anonymous until he was ready to talk. Later that evening, Rentt prepared dinner, and Lorraine reported that she still hadn't found anything about his condition. Rentt decided he needed to grow stronger. He resolved to return to the dungeon and push further in hopes of evolving again, perhaps into something more human-like. In the depths of the labyrinth, Rentt encountered a man cornered by a slime and quickly dispatched the monster. The man, clearly not a fighter, introduced himself as a chef who had taken up adventuring only because he had been drowning in debt. Initially, Rentt wasn't interested in babysitting a rookie cook in the middle of monster-infested ruins, but after a moment's thought, he agreed to help. He brought the chef to the now-empty dragon's lair, hoping they might stumble upon some forgotten treasure. Unfortunately, the chef managed to do what no adventurer should ever do. He accidentally stepped into a glowing magical circle. Before Rentt could stop him, they were both teleported deep into a hidden chamber. It was no ordinary room. It was the secret boss arena. And standing in the center was a towering, undead skeleton of a giant. Rentt engaged the massive undead skeleton in a fierce battle while the chef lay unconscious nearby. His normal sword strikes barely scratched the monster, so Rentt resorted to fusing his sword with divine energy. With a surge of magical force and grit only a formerly dead adventurer could muster, he eventually defeated the towering foe, reducing it to a pile of rattling bones and leaving behind a powerful magic stone. Once the dust had settled, he turned his attention to the unconscious chef and healed him with basic recovery magic. The chef awoke with a start, utterly shocked to see the skeleton defeated, and even more stunned that his odd, cloaked savior had done it single-handedly. Rentt handed him the fallen boss's magic stone, and when the chef hesitated, unsure why a stranger would give him such a valuable item, Rentt revealed his undead condition and asked for a small favor in return. In gratitude, and perhaps slight terror, the chef agreed to help. He would visit the town shops for Rentt, provide him with meals at his restaurant, and keep his condition a secret. Before parting ways, Rentt noticed another teleportation circle deeper in the boss room. He told the chef to take the safe one, which led back outside. The man then tells his wife about his adventure. When he did, his wife initially suspected rentt might be some sort of scam artist. However, the man then introduced himself as Lour and his wife Isabel. He and Isabel were truly grateful. Rentt trusted them to keep his name secret, though, while returning, he is hoping that Lour is not a liar. Returning home, rentt found himself overwhelmed by strange, dark impulses. As soon as he stepped inside Lorraine's home, who was waiting for him, the mask's enchanted mouthpiece slid open on its own. With terrifying instinct, he lunged forward at an unsuspecting Lorraine. Her blood quickly brought him back to his senses, just in time for her to sock him squarely in the head, knocking him out cold. When rentt awoke, groggy and filled with guilt, he apologized profusely. Lorraine, already familiar with monster biology, took it in stride. After all, ghouls were notorious for their taste in human flesh and blood. When she tried to leave for the guild, rentt stopped her and healed the wound himself. However, he admitted that ever since witnessing Lour's injury in the dungeon, he had felt uneasy, plagued by growing cannibalistic urges. They both examined the mask. Though it still refused to come off, it now responded to rentt's thoughts, allowing him to open its mouth or eye slots at will. They also noticed that rentt's body now had more flesh than before. Lorraine, always the scholar, quickly realized that rentt had undergone another transformation, existential evolution. By drinking her blood, he had evolved into a ghast, a more advanced and fleshy form of undead. She explained how monster evolution was rarely linear. While most skeletons simply crumbled, a few rare ones evolved into ghouls, and environmental or emotional factors could heavily influence their paths. In rentt's case, his strong desire to look more human may be steering him toward the path of a vampire. Realizing this, Lorraine offered to help him, both as a friend and as a researcher. Of course, there was a price. She insisted on studying his evolving body for academic purposes. Rentt, with only mild hesitation, agreed. Later, rentt visited Klope's forge to collect his sword, but it wasn't finished yet. Klope, ever discreet, lent him a temporary weapon so rentt could return to the dungeon. On the way back, rentt passed by the village square and saw that Lour and Isabel had reopened their restaurant. Lorraine, ever the curious scholar, decides to test rentt's undead condition further by concocting a poison. She discovers that rentt is now completely immune to poison and doesn't even need to sleep. However, rentt admits he still suffers from occasional cannibalistic urges. Instead of being alarmed, Lorraine offers him her blood, and they discover that just a few drops are enough to keep his ghastly cravings at bay. Convenient and slightly creepy, just the way Lorraine likes her research. Rentt tells Lorraine he wants to return to the guild and accept a quest. She immediately stops him, warning that such a move would cause an uproar. Rentt scoffs, saying he's just a lowly bronze-ranked adventurer no one would miss. But to his surprise, Lorraine informs him that he was well-liked and respected. Not only that, there were rumors that the guild even wanted to hire him due to his labyrinth knowledge. Rentt, of course, has no interest in sitting behind a desk handing out paperwork. He wants to keep adventuring. To avoid suspicion, Lorraine proposes that he re-register at the guild under a new name. If he uses his old one, someone will inevitably recognize him. Rentt agrees and heads to the guild, registering as a novice once again under his new identity, as Rentt Vivian pretends a distant relative of Lorraine. There, he meets the guild secretary, Sheila Abars, who seems oddly emotional over someone named rentt going missing. Rentt, now feeling just a bit guilty, realizes how many people at the guild actually cared about him. Returning to the dungeon, rentt spots two novice adventurers, Lour and Rise, who appear to be doing well on their own. Not wanting to crowd them, he ventures deeper into the unexplored areas. Mapping out new sections of the dungeon would boost his reputation and help him advance ranks again. Eventually, rentt finds himself teleported into a mysterious, undiscovered room. There, a strange woman is guarding a skeleton. She attacks him at first, mistaking him for a grave robber, but when she sees his ghast form, her aggression vanishes. Without a word, she gives him her cloak and hands him an acacia map, which magically records every place he visits. Her only request: keep her location secret. Before rentt can ask her anything, she teleports him out of the room. Back home, rentt shows Lorraine the map and cloak. She's visibly impressed, borderline ecstatic. The acacia map is as valuable as a national treasure, capable of showing everywhere rentt has been, and even marking people he's met in the dungeon. The cloak, meanwhile, is practically indestructible, magic resistant, and stronger than any armor. Rentt decides he wants to see the mysterious woman again, not just to thank her, but because she never explicitly told him not to return. However, when he tries, he finds the entire area sealed off. Meanwhile, back at the guild, more and more adventurers are expressing how much they miss Rentt. Many of them had learned the ropes from him during their novice days and felt his absence keenly, and Sheila is one of them. Just then, Rentt appears and casually asks to take on an orc-slaying quest. Rentt successfully completes the orc-slaying quest and is promptly offered the opportunity to graduate from Iron class to Bronze class. Feeling accomplished, he returns home, where Lorraine is waiting for him. Curious, she asks what name he used to re-register at the guild. When Rentt casually replies, "Rentt Vivi," Lorraine nearly chokes on her tea. She demands to know why he would use her family name. Rentt, ever the humble gentleman, explains that he didn't want people gossiping about her letting a mysterious man live in her home. Lorraine, a little flustered, tells him she doesn't care what others think, but secretly feels touched. She thanks him for doing all the housework, but Rentt insists he should be thanking her, saying it's because of her that he still feels human. Lorraine, softening, tells him he's welcome to stay with her as long as he wants. The next day, Rentt returns to the guild to officially take the promotional exam. He quickly notices the place is packed with eager adventurers. Among the crowd, he spots the same duo he saw in the dungeon earlier. The guild staff announces that the test will have 2 parts, a written exam and a practical exam. The written test is a breeze for Rentt. After all, he already passed it once in his former life. He earns a perfect score without breaking a sweat. For the practical test, he is teamed up with Rise Dunner, a swordsman, and Lour, a sorceress, to compete against other adventuring parties. The goal? Be the first team to reach a designated room in the New Moon Labyrinth before sunset. There are no rules, anything goes, so long as they get there first. Upon entering the labyrinth, Rentt quickly identifies the first obstacle: outdated maps. Without hesitation, they buy a new one. Rentt explains that the guild often plants such traps to test adventurers' decision-making skills. As they delve deeper into the labyrinth, the team encounters a few monsters. Rentt is pleasantly surprised by how capable Rise and Lour are in combat. Rentt shows them the monster-attracting herb and tells them it was the guild's doing. Rentt then begins to suspect something fishy and warns his teammates about an impending ambush. Sure enough, another party attempts to attack them, and Rise and Lour are briefly stunned. Rentt calmly reminds them that with no rules in place, tactics like this are common during practical exams. They recover quickly and, with Rentt's help, defeat their ambushes. Unbeknownst to them, a hidden examiner watches from the shadows, impressed that Rentt not only anticipated the ambush but also identified the attackers as undercover examiners placed to raise the challenge level. Back at the guild, Guild Master Wolf instructs Sheila to keep an eye on Rentt. His sudden return and unusually advanced skills have raised a few eyebrows. As the group presses on, they finally reach the goal, a boss room. Rise grows nervous, admitting it's his first time fighting a boss monster. Rentt offers him a way out, but Rise, fueled by pride, chooses to face the challenge head-on. Just then, another cocky party shows up and mocks them. Rather than engage, Rentt calmly humiliates them with sharp wit and lets them enter the boss's room first. The arrogant team is quickly flattened, confirming Rentt's suspicion that more examiners are hidden nearby to prevent actual fatalities. Reassured, Rise and Lour step into the boss room, determined and more confident. The boss of the labyrinth turns out to be a grand slime, an oversized blob with more bounce than menace. Rentt, ever the tactician, decides not to engage directly. He wants Rise and Lour to gain valuable combat experience. With a bit of subtle help from Rentt, the duo manages to defeat the grand slime, earning both victory and a confidence boost. Another adventuring party tries to swoop in and claim credit but ends up caught in one of the guild's traps. Sweet justice in action. As the first team to reach the boss and defeat it, Rentt's group is officially promoted to Bronze class. They're also rewarded with potions and a handy carrying case for their efforts. On the way back, Rentt gives Rise and Lour a crash course in just how tricky labyrinths can be, leading them through a floor that resembles a forest from a fever whose geography changes constantly. At the guild, Sheila warmly congratulates the trio. The observing staff confirm their performance, and the promotions are made official. Rise and Lour thank Rentt profusely for guiding them and teaching them survival skills they never knew they needed. They even ask to form a permanent party with him, but Rentt politely declines. His journey is one best walked alone, and possibly undead. As they part ways, hoping to meet again, Sheila pulls Rentt aside and says they need to talk. Rentt knows the moment has come. She's figured him out. Sheila quietly asks if he's really Rentt Fina, the adventurer who mysteriously vanished. She reveals she hasn't told anyone at the guild yet. Rentt is unsure about telling her, so she surprises Rentt by offering to sign a magical contract, one that would bind her as his slave for life if she ever reveals his secret. Rentt, stunned, asks why she would go so far. Sheila explains that Rentt has helped more people than he realizes, herself included. She owes him more than just gratitude. Moved, Rentt decides to come clean. He reveals he is now undead and removes his mask, prompting a brief but expected moment of panic. Still, Sheila insists on hearing everything. To ensure transparency, Rentt brings her to Lorraine's house. Lorraine, however, is not amused. She's immediately suspicious of Sheila's intentions and quietly considers whether murder might be the best way to maintain Rentt's secret, but is eventually convinced of her good intentions. Sheila reveals troubling news: novice adventurers have been mysteriously disappearing across the kingdom. The guild suspects a large-scale kidnapping operation. Worse yet, Guildmaster Wolf believes Rentt might be involved, given his sudden reappearance in Malt without a clear background. To avoid raising further suspicion, Rentt agrees to lie low for a few days while Sheila works to convince Wolf that Rentt is not the villain they're looking for. While receiving his newly crafted sword from Clope, Rentt decides to test its durability and compatibility with his powers. Infusing it with magic, spirit energy, and divinity, he slices a wooden log in half. To everyone's surprise, the log sprouts leaves the moment it's cut, clearly reacting to the divine energy. Clope, ever the curious craftsman, promptly takes the sprouted log for further study. Rentt then attempts to use all three of his powers simultaneously: magic, spirit, and divinity, and discovers the faint outlines of a powerful new technique. He realizes that mastering this ability may be the key to achieving his lifelong dream of reaching mithril-class. The only hitch? He'll need high-quality gear and funding, lots of it. The only problem is how to make money while avoiding the guild. While pondering his next move, Rentt notices a frustrated man trying to hire adventurers, only to be repeatedly turned down. Rentt hands some coins to the adventurer and then approaches the man himself. The man introduces himself as Ryantus from Tatsa village. He offers a job unsanctioned by the guild, which is exactly the kind of low-profile opportunity Rentt needs. Ryantus explains that his younger sister, Amiris, is slated to be sacrificed to the so-called Lake Lord, a sacred ritual that's supposed to protect the village. While the tradition is ancient, the recent frequency and timing of the Lake Lord's demands have become suspiciously convenient. Upon arriving in the village, Rentt meets Amiris, who is less than thrilled to see him. She scolds Ryantus for dragging a stranger into village matters and assumes Rentt might be a scammer preying on desperate people. Rentt, unfazed and contractually bound, refuses to leave. Amiris reluctantly allows him to stay until the night of the festival. The next day, Rentt notices a pair of shady traders loitering around the village. His instincts scream trouble, and when questioned, the traders casually suggest he leave before Lord of the Lake get more anger. When the night of the sacrifice arrives, Amiris prepares herself for the ritual, but Rentt urges her to hold on to hope for herself and for her brother. They all go, and during the sacrifice Rentt, Ryantus, and Amiris all watch as the Lake Lord appears. With Lorraine's magical device helping him walk on water like some undead messiah, Rentt confronts the so-called Lake Lord. Slashing through the illusion, he exposes the truth. It's a powerful spell cast by the shady traders. A brief battle ensues, and Rentt defeats them. Under interrogation, the traders confess that they created the illusion of the Lake Lord to frighten villagers into offering up girls, whom they then abducted and sold as slaves. With the scam revealed, the girls are safely returned to their homes. Rentt not only receives his well-earned payment, but also a surprise kiss from Amiris, who is now significantly less hostile toward him. As the traders only targeted young girls, Rentt concludes they are not involved with the missing adventurers. Rentt, always on the lookout for quests that let him keep a low profile, notices a suspiciously low-paying request on the guild board, 1 bronze coin, to be exact. Unsurprisingly, no one else is taking it. Sheila, ever mysterious, personally recommends it to him. The task? Retrieve a rare flower known as the Dragonblood Rose. Though the reward is tiny, the flower is said to be tied to the ancient legend of love between a dragon and a human, and its petals are known for their incredible medicinal properties. Rentt agrees, especially after learning the request came from the Malt orphanage. When he visits the orphanage, Rentt is mistaken by a young girl named Alize as a debt collector. Apparently, no one expected anyone to take the quest. After a bit of confusion, she introduces him to the headmistress, Lillian, who, as it turns out, is very ill. Alize confides that Lillian suffers from a rare condition called malacumula, a disease that worsens with every use of magic and will eventually be fatal. Lillian doesn't know she's sick, because if she did, she'd stubbornly keep casting spells to help the orphans and never accept medicine, especially something as rare as dragonblood. Alize confesses that if no one had accepted the quest, she had planned to become an adventurer and retrieve the flower herself. Before heading out, Rentt offers to help with some cleaning around the orphanage, and ends up battling a swarm of rat monsters in the basement. When the rat boss bites him, something strange happens. Rentt's blood tames it, turning the monster into his familiar, a rare trait usually seen in vampires. Lorraine later names the new rat companion Edel, and also discovers Rentt can now eat regular food, as long as it contains her blood. Rentt then sets off to the Tarrasque swamp, a deadly place shrouded in toxic mist and crawling with rare plants and even rarer monsters. Luckily, Rentt's undead body is completely immune to the poisonous atmosphere. The swamp creatures, unusually intelligent and armed with weapons, still fail to challenge Rentt's now ghastly strength. Meanwhile, back in Malt, Sheila visits Lorraine. As they chat about Rentt's recent good deeds, such as saving Tatsa village without seeking recognition, they realize they know almost nothing about why Rentt is so obsessed with reaching mithril-class. Sheila worries about Rentt being alone in the swamp, but Lorraine reassures her that their half-rotted adventurer is quite capable of handling himself. Deep within the swamp, Rentt faces off against a massive Tarrasque dragon. Rentt discovers Edel can use his magic. With Edel's little help, Rentt manages to bring the beast down and stores it in his magic bag. Among the swamp's ruins, he finally discovers a cluster of dragon blood roses. Feeling optimistic, he decides to pluck a few extra. What could go wrong? Just then, a male elf appears from the mist, and it's clear he's not there to offer Rentt gardening tips. Rentt was immediately suspicious when an elf appeared in the swamp claiming to be just a normal guy, also out looking for dragon blood. The elf boasted about his poison repellents and special gadgets that helped him survive the swamp, but Rentt could tell by the elf's casual confidence that he was far more experienced than he let on. They both ended up collecting dragon blood side by side without incident. The elf eventually introduced himself as Isaac Hart and revealed that he needed the dragon blood to treat his sick employer. Before leaving, he offered Rentt a job to regularly supply more of the rare medicinal flower. Rentt wasn't sure if this was a lucrative opportunity, but he kept the offer in mind. Back at the guild, Rentt knew walking in with chunks of a Tarrasque dragon was bound to raise eyebrows, so he asked Sheila to discreetly take the materials to Dario, the monster butcher. Sheila, already wise to Rentt's increasingly ridiculous achievements, commented that he had gotten much stronger and might be ready to attempt promotion to silver class. Later, Rentt visited the orphanage to deliver the dragon blood to Alize. He gave extra doses to the town's healer and herbalist for good measure. Edel, his surprisingly diplomatic rat familiar, convinced the rest of the rat monsters to protect the orphanage in his absence. Alize, touched by Rentt's help, expressed her dream of becoming an adventurer like him. Unfortunately, she couldn't afford magic lessons. Rentt tells that he knows someone who can teach, and she can pay back after she becomes an adventurer. Rentt asks Lorraine to teach her magic, and she agrees, but nearly vaporizes him on the spot, especially after he unintentionally suggests she is no longer young. Rentt managed to dodge incineration by launching a barrage of desperate, and unexpectedly flattering, compliments that left Lorraine embarrassed but persuaded. The next morning, Sheila informed Rentt that the guild had received an official request for him from the prestigious and extremely powerful Lour family. As it turned out, Isaac Hart worked for them. Refusing the request wasn't really an option unless Rentt wanted to disappear in the middle of the night, so he accepted, although Sheila worried that getting involved with them could expose his undead identity. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Headmistress Lillian finally learned from the healer that she had malacumula. She decided to step down to avoid burdening the children, only to be informed that they now had the medicine and didn't need any money thanks to Rentt. Lillian was moved to tears and quietly thanked the mysterious benefactor. Rentt made his way to the Lour mansion, where he was met by a guard who explained that the only way to gain entry was to pass through a magical, ever-shifting maze. If successful, he'd receive a magic tool from the head of the family. The only clue he was given? The sun cannot help you. Rentt, confidently thinking the maze didn't look all that big, stepped in like a man on a casual stroll. Several hours later, hopelessly lost, Rentt continued to wander endlessly through the ever-shifting magical maze, which seemed more interested in messing with his sense of direction than actually testing him. Just when he thought he might have to start eating his cloak, he stumbled upon a small garden at the center of the labyrinth, where a young woman calmly waited, sipping tea. She asked if he was ready to give up, but Rentt, stubborn as always, said he wanted to press on. Amused, she offered him a cup of tea as a break. Rentt, still partly undead but never one to turn down free refreshments, accepted. He discovers she is a collector of magical items found in labyrinths. He also discovered her teapot itself was a magical artifact, capable of brewing any tea the user desired. As they sipped, she noticed Rentt's strange iron mask and asked if he'd be willing to sell it. Apparently, it was rare and potentially valuable. Rentt was tempted, especially when she casually offered a small fortune for it, but between not being able to remove it and the awkward fact that it was hiding his still pretty ghastly face, he politely declined. Receiving the same cryptic clue. Don't rely on the sun. He eventually deduced the maze was using teleportation to mess with him. After more head-spinning misdirection, he finally emerged, only to find the very same tea-sipping woman waiting for him again. She then formally introduced herself as Lour, the head of the mysterious and wealthy Lour family. Rentt asked for his promised reward for completing the maze. Lour, true to her word, led him into the family's treasure vault, which turned out to be enormous, basically a hoarder's dream if the hoarder collected nothing but priceless magical artifacts. His attention was immediately grabbed by a mana-powered airship model. Lour explained it could fly and even let the user share senses with it to scout from the sky. Unfortunately, its mana cost made it more of a fancy toy than a practical tool, but Rentt still found it impressive. Next, he spotted a bizarre painting and, at Lour's insistence, pushed a button on the frame. The painting let out a weird noise that startled Rentt but made Lour laugh like she was hosting a game show. But the real chaos began when he accidentally activated a golem hidden among the items. The thing went berserk, and before Rentt could figure out how to shut it down, it had already flipped several tables. Isaac had apparently hidden the golem's off switch somewhere else. Just as the golem nearly flattened Rentt like a pancake, Lour casually issued a command to shut it down as Isaac found the switch. Shaken but not stirred, Rentt resumed browsing. He soon laid eyes on a vial of vampire blood, which, in theory, could help him evolve into a more human-looking vampire and fast-track his dream of becoming a mithril-class adventurer. Lour, however, quickly gave him a reality check. She explained that historically, every human who drank vampire blood either died immediately, became a cripple, or, in the rare case if they survived and became a vampire, they would reveal as fear of being hunted down and executed on sight. Not exactly an inspiring track record. After weighing the risks, Rentt ultimately chose the airship as his reward. Later, he demonstrated it to Lorraine, flying it like a kid showing off a new drone. He also revealed that he had agreed to a contract with Lour to regularly supply dragon bloods. Unexpectedly, Lour had also gifted him the vial of vampire blood, for free, just in case he ever decided to gamble with his life and evolutionary biology. Lorraine wishes he would not take the risk and remain as he is now. But she also knew better than to argue with Rentt's relentless obsession with becoming stronger and reaching the elite ranks of mithril-class adventurers. Deep down, she just hoped he wouldn't die doing something spectacularly stupid. Curious about what drove him so relentlessly, Lorraine finally asked Rentt the question she'd kept to herself for years. Why was he so obsessed with becoming a mithril-class adventurer? Rentt seemed surprised and asked if he'd never told her. Lorraine reminded him that he once mentioned adventurers shouldn't pry into each other's pasts, so she'd respected that boundary. Rentt chuckled quietly and admitted it wasn't some noble goal or desire for fame, it was revenge. That answer took Lorraine completely off guard. Rentt began to recount a piece of his past she had never heard before. He grew up in a small, quiet village. His father worked as a merchant, traveling to bring supplies back to the villagers. When Rentt was 5, his father took him on a trip outside the village, accompanied by Rentt's energetic childhood friend, Jean Lin, and their gentle grandmother. Rentt had always been shy and quiet, the opposite of Jean Lin, who declared proudly that he'd grow up to be an adventurer. The happy trip took a tragic turn when they were ambushed by a vicious wolf monster. Rentt's father and grandmother were killed in the attack. Jean Lin, though just a child himself, grabbed Rentt's hand and dragged him away to safety, doing everything she could to protect his friend. But the monster caught up to them, and Jean Lin died shielding Rentt from the final blow. As the monster closed in for the kill, an adventurer suddenly appeared. He fended off the beast and saved Rentt's life. Later, when Rentt asked how to become an adventurer, the man told him that he'd need to wait until he was 15 and, in the meantime, learn to read, write, and survive. That adventurer introduced himself as Wilfried Ryucker, one of the rare and legendary mithril-class adventurers. Before parting, he told Rentt to come find him when he had grown stronger. From that moment, Rentt had only one dream, to become mithril-class. Not for the glory, but to keep the promise he made to himself, to show Wilfried he made it, and to one day slay the monster that destroyed his family. Moved by the depth of his conviction, Lorraine gave him her quiet approval to drink the vampire blood. The transformation was far from graceful. Rentt's body writhed in agony, mutating as monstrous instincts clawed at his mind, trying to consume what remained of his humanity. Just as he teetered on the edge of losing himself completely, Lorraine's voice reached him in the darkness. Her calm presence grounded him, and he clung to her voice like a lifeline. Days later, life around Rentt slowly resumed. Cloak began work on a stronger sword to match his evolving powers. Alize was overjoyed as Lillian's condition started to improve. Meanwhile, Rise and Lour formed a party with Rena, who now felt more confident than ever in her new team. Eventually, after having happened to till now, Rentt awoke from his long slumber. Lorraine, who had been keeping a watchful eye on him, noticed something remarkable. He now looked fully human. That is, she finds him wings sprouting from his back and his eyes become. She confirmed he had successfully evolved into a new form of vampire. Sadly, the cursed iron mask was still clinging to his face like a bad fashion statement, but Lorraine was too happy seeing his face again to complain. In the end, later, Rentt joined Lorraine on a peaceful herb-gathering trip. He expressed his desire to finally meet Wilfried again, but the news wasn't promising. Rumors claimed Wilfried had left the country, and Rentt still hadn't reached mithril-class yet. Lorraine, ever loyal, simply said that if he did decide to leave on that journey, she would go with him.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Until next time, take care.